Okay, so we're here on the Pininfarina stand, and if you hadn't heard, Pininfarina is no longer just the most famous Italian design house. It's actually a car maker in its own right. So the first car that wore the Pininfarina badge was the Battista pure electric hypercar. They've got a special Nino Farina edition down there. And then recently they showed us this thing in the middle, the Pura Vision. It's a luxury electric SUV that they do plan on making down the line, but it's also a bit of a design manifesto showing where the company's going, and the first fruits of that design language are this thing here. It's also Pininfarina's first foray into ultra low volume coach built cars. So this thing, they're only going to make 10 of them, costing 4.4 million euros each. It's called the B95, and it is, well, a very, very striking speedster, as you can see. The name, so B stands for Barchetta, 95, because when this car goes into production, when they start delivering it in 2025, the company Pininfarina will be 95 years old. So it's based on the Battista itself, based on the Rimac Nevera. So underneath you've got 120 kilowatt hour lithium ion battery. It's in a T shape, so it runs down the middle of the car and then across the back of the seats. And you've got 4 electric motors producing 1900 horsepower. So this thing, like the Battista, will do 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds, top speed 186 miles an hour. It is one of the very fastest cars on the planet, and now you can have one without a windscreen, which seems like an entirely sensible idea. It does look absolutely wonderful though, and if Pininfarinas aren't the most wonderful looking cars on the planet, well then something's wrong with the planet. Speedsters, they're an interesting breed, aren't there? There's been a rash of them recently. You may remember that we actually did the Holy Trinity of Speedsters test. We got together the Ferrari Monza, the McLaren Elva, and the Aston Martin Speedster. And what's really interesting about all of them is you have to find a way to try and keep the wind out of the driver and passenger's face, because it can get quite unpleasant quite quickly. And all of them have different solutions. So the Monza, as I seem to recall, has an air channel here that spits the air up into the air. We'll give it a B-. The McLaren Elva, much more complicated. It has a carbon fibre, how would you call it? A piece of carbon fibre that rises out of the front bonnet, creates an area of low pressure behind it, sucks in the air and shoots it over your head. That works much better. And the Aston Speedster just has a little perspex lip that doesn't really do much at all. Well, Pininfarina have actually put some thought into this one, and they've got this perspex shield here, which actually moves up and down. I'm going to show you how it works because it's pretty cool. So if I open the door up here, I'll hop in. Fortunately, because we don't have a windscreen, you can get a good view of this. The view out, spectacular, of course. And there's a little toggle switch here. So if I do that, then it lifts up to, I believe, 10.5 degrees. But honestly, having driven these cars, you're going to want that in its highest position. And the passenger, there we go, they get some protection as well. But also just a fantastic little gimmick to play with. Hopefully I'm not going to break it. All right, that's enough. We'll stop there. Interestingly, when I drove all these speedsters, the Monza especially, with that naturally aspirated Ferrari V12, I was expecting it to be the most sensational oral experience, having no windscreen, being completely exposed to the exhaust pipes. Over 30 miles an hour, you can't even hear the engine anyway. It was a complete waste of time. So the fact that this thing is electric and doesn't make any noise, well, I think it actually quite suits this whole Barchetta speedster genre. Now, we need to talk about the spec of this car because it looks stunning. I know nothing about design, but this caught my eye, especially the houndstooth. Look at that. Who doesn't like a bit of houndstooth on your seats? But I am getting dangerously out of my depth talking about the design and the spec and everything else that goes into creating a beautiful car like this that is worthy of a price tag that's as gargantuan as that, 4.4 million euros. So I'm going to invite in the head of design, a guy called Dave Amantea, who can tell us a bit more about the project. Dave, lovely to see you. First things first though, we need to put these hats on. We need to get into the quail spirit of things.
Let's put the right
I found
gear.
these Pininfarina hats lying around the back. So, oh, you just make it look good. Yeah. You just make it look good. Now, a few questions. the obvious one, why do a Speedster, a Barchetta, why chop the windscreen off the Battista and create this new thing?
Our aim was basically amaze the customer with a totally different experience than Battista.
Yeah.
So, of course, the two cars share the same platform, but we want to create a new design emotion, and then we remove everything. She is the very first hyper Barchetta in the world.
Yes, and then you, obviously there is a problem with not having a windscreen. The windscreen keeps the wind out of your face and the insects and everything else. So you had to come up with a solution that was integrated and sleek and, you know, good enough for a Pininfarina, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So Pininfarina is famous for design plus function, right?
Yeah.
So we cannot avoid to do so. So our idea was to improve a little bit the comfort while cruising on this beauty.
Yeah.
So then we noticed that we should do something for our customer. We collect some advice, and then we realized the first electronically windshield that you can adjust manually based on your height and the speed. And then based on your taste, you can have a better experience.
Yeah, so we had to go with it earlier. We had a little play. No idea whether it works. 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds is going to be quite a rush.
Oh, yes.
Isn't it? Yeah,
Yes.
Are you volunteering to test that out for the first time?
Yes, but if I have to speed up, I'm going to wear a helmet for sure.
All right, so head of design, this car over here, I mean, this is your baby, right? So this is your, like, your vision. Well, it's literally the pura vision, but it's the vision of the future of Pininfarina road car design.
Yes.
Now, I'm design illiterate, right? But you're saying that design is distilled into this car. They look completely different.
Yes.
Describe to me, help me understand how you can take that idea and put it into this.
Yeah, well, in Pura Vision, we try to basically showcase that an electric car can be beautiful and that the heritage that we have could be also futuristic.
Yeah.
So we try to make something that is difficult to call an SUV. It's not an SUV at all.
You call it an ELUV.
Correct.
You know, the only problem with that is in Yorkshire, it's pronounced elov, which is how they say hello.
Actually, it was a reminder at the beginning of love, but it became hello.
Yeah.
I mean, we want to create the best luxury experience for 4 occupants. And then we say, let's prove to the people that we own the recipe of timeless design. Let's create something wild, again in a different segment, and then let's try again if the people is gonna say, wow.
Yeah.
And I think it works.
And what elements of that then are here? Obviously, front end, the lights, the slim lights.
Yes.
Talk to me, is it this kind of quite smooth form? There's not loads of creases and fuss everywhere else.
Yeah.
And you can see I'm getting out of my depth here with design. So help me.
Yes. The first ingredient is simplicity. The body has to be sexy and sleek.
Yeah.
And then on the lower part, the carbon exposed part is what we call contrast, in order to amaze the people and convey a more, strong feeling. And then, of course, we work with details that is taking, from the past, from our heritage, and then modern surfacing. But combining those ingredients and balancing those ingredients on the perfect way, we create a new emotion. So basically, we were taking definitely the front end of Pura, that in this case is really, conveying a luxury status status, and we transform in a sporty feeling. Yeah. So while doing that, we're feeling like the recipe works.
Yeah.
And then the muscularity of the car, what we call vertical muscle, is taken from that car and bringing here, but just with a different shape. Yeah.
So this whole Pininfarina being a car company on its own, not just a design house, it's still quite new. I mean, the Battista's only been around for 2 years or something like this. What is it? If you had to distill down, what does a Pininfarina road car, a car that wears a Pininfarina badge on its nose, what does it have to be?
Is what I call the beauty of imperfection. I mean, the Italian design is beautiful when can create emotion. And it's not about having 0.5 millimeter gap constant in 6 meters from front to the rear. It's conveying an emotion, so play with the surface and the highlights. When you control reflection, you can transfer in the emotion and the gesture of a designer while sketching in the eyes of the customer.
Yeah.
This is Pininfarina and this is the true Italian design.
So that's why you have to start with a a hand-drawn sketch. You
Always.
can't just do it all on computer.
Always on paper.
Yeah.
First.
Because then you get the human imperfections and.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
I think Dave's about to offer me a job over here. Look, it's
You're ready.
It's fantastic. It's a spectacular car. Unfortunately, I left my checkbook at home today, but you know, otherwise I'd have one.
I give you a ride.
You know, thanks to the free hat.